Wake up!
Welcome back. Long time since I made the last video in this series. Hoping to complete it in the next few months. Last discussion focused on hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations, vivid sensory experiences that occur at the edges of sleep. Solomon Briggs, an artist, photographer, longtime advocate, now the chief sleep translator at Sleep-Wake Dynamics, spent over a decade trying to bridge the gap between the clinical science and the lived experience, especially towards narcolepsy, but also other sleep disorders, as I have 3. In this video, we're going to focus on the sensation of being frozen and begin to lean into cataplexy. That upcoming video will be particularly loaded and complex. Honestly, all of these topics are difficult because the reality of living with them is exactly that, difficult and complex. Video, I will be displaying several Sleep-Wake Dynamics infographics. I want to give a shout out to these educational resources. They speak into depths that often aren't openly presented in standard materials. Sleep paralysis is traditionally defined as a state of wakeful paralysis, a period during sleep onset or awakening where you are mentally conscious but experience total muscle atonia, the inability to move upon awakening. As we see in the shadow in the room infographic, this typically happens during hypnagogic, falling asleep, or hypnopompic, waking up, states. During normal REM sleep, your brain releases neurotransmitters like GABA and glycine to lock your muscles so you don't act out your dreams. In a typical brain, this switch is crisp, but in narcolepsy, the boundaries are blurred. As I mentioned in the hallucinations previous video, these experiences have a long history. Science calls it a biological mistiming, but cultures have known it for centuries as the old hag. Sleep paralysis is essentially a lingering of the REM atonia into wakefulness. Clinical textbooks often treat sleep paralysis as an all or nothing event. You're either completely locked down in your bed or you are wide awake, but the lived experience reveals a hidden spectrum that is far more nuanced, fluid, and complex. From my perspective, the muscle atonia, or sleep inertia, and the heavy physical impacts during sleep attacks, for example, are actually partial extents of sleep paralysis. While I want to be clear, I'm not saying anyone is wrong in whatever terms they decide to use, simply trying to help evolve the comprehension of what may be going on, bring more clarity towards the lived experience, connecting dots as they seemingly fit together. Crucially here, these partial extents of sleep paralysis can strike at any point you experience REM. It is not just limited to morning awakenings or during scheduled naps. It happens during sleep attacks and microsleeps, hitting with strong excessive daytime sleepiness at any time, day or night. When this boundary failure manifests at a minimal partial extent, presents as sleep inertia, think of it as trying to force your body to wade through deep, thick mud. The signal from your brain is trying to move forward, but every single step requires immense physical effort because the ground is literally pulling back against you, dropping your feet in a heavy, invisible vacuum. Your motor resources are dwindling and fatigued, but your baseline functionality is still trying to tear itself free. This is very relative to brain fog in a similar manner as well. When a sleep attack or a microsleep hits midday, that partial atonia drops right into your waking life. It behaves much like a concentrated drop of ink falling into clear water. It immediately begins to bleed, feather, cloud your motor control with a heavy, passive sluggishness. When that total boundary failure becomes even more disorganized, scales up to a moderate partial extent, it leads directly into sleep drunkenness. This brings an even heavier disorientation, crushing physical fatigue, and a deep, suffocating brain fog that completely compromises your situational awareness. Conscious mind is awake, but you are navigating a clumsy, uncoupled lag where your brain and your body are speaking entirely different languages. Understanding these minimal and moderate partial states is crucial because it shows that sleep paralysis isn't just a static nightmare that happens in the dark, it is an ongoing fluid battle with REM atonia, blurring the lines of our waking life. Beyond clinical definitions, there is the lived experience. fierce battle within. To an observer, someone in sleep paralysis might look like they are just sleeping soundly. In pediatric narcolepsy especially, this is incredibly easy to overlook. Parents or teachers might see a child who seems difficult to wake up, stubborn for not getting out of bed. Reality is that the child may be wide awake, hearing everything while fighting a massive physiological battle to move a single muscle. This is a cocktail of fear and a struggle involving intense irritation. It's important to understand the amygdala's role here. During an episode, the brain's threat detection center is hyperactivated. It feels the physical restriction and invents a shadow or intruder to make sense of that fear. This spectrum of severity often goes hand in hand with the diverse hallucinations shown in these infographics. It is more than just shadow people. It can be a combination of auditory, sensory, and visual experiences. It can involve intense buzzing, feeling of being pulled downward and or spinning, spiraling, or non-human entities. These experiences blur the line because the boundary between being awake and dreaming is porous, allowing dream imagery to bleed into reality. The mechanism of atonia, the body's natural paralysis, is a crucial bridge to our next topic, cataplexy. I want to be very specific about terminology here. Over the last decade, muscle weakness has become the standard term used to describe cataplexy, pretty much replacing loss of muscle tone. A shift, I believe, that actually obstructs our understanding and exacerbates confusion. While weakness isn't necessarily wrong, it is certainly part of the ordeal. It doesn't fully capture the reality. What we are discussing isn't just a lack of energy or feeling worn out, it is atonia. A mechanical failure where the signal from the brain simply does not reach the muscle. Even at a minimal partial extent, a loss of muscle tone is a system crisis. It is a fundamentally different impact than just muscle weakness, sleep inertia, or sleep drunkenness. Now, this is where things get incredibly complex, and it's a distinction that is rarely made clear. Both sleep paralysis and cataplexy share the exact same biological mechanism, REM atonia. Because of that, at partial extents, there's a giant window of variability and a massive amount of overlap. But they are completely different spectrums because their baseline environments, triggers, are polar opposites. Think of it this way. Partial sleep paralysis, like sleep inertia or sleep drunkenness, happens on the edges of sleep or during a heavy sleep attack. It presents as a global sluggishness. Your whole body feels heavy, slow, because your conscious mind is physically fighting a lingering, transitioning sleep state. Cataplexy, on the other hand, intrudes when you are fully awake, alert, and conscious, triggered not by tiredness, but by emotion or strenuous physical exertion, when you're beyond your reserves. When it manifests in a partial extent, it isn't a global sleepy slowness, it's a localized system crisis, a sudden quirky drop of muscle tone, in just your jaw, your hands, your speech, your knees, your upper body, your upper torso, etc. Trying to untangle them is like trying to describe the shape of a cloud versus the shape of a wave. In essence, they're exactly the same substance, REM atonia, manifesting in entirely different physical states. One is a light, widespread vapor, the other is a heavy, crashing solid. While sleep paralysis is a passive lingering of sleep, cataplexy is an active motor phenomenon. It isn't just a static state of being frozen, it is a live, dynamic intrusion that actively drops your muscle tone mid-motion. But there is a turbulent, in-between overlap. Just like weather can turn into rain or freezing snow, the partial presentations of these two symptoms can completely twine together. Cataplexy can easily be triggered while you are already sleepy or sluggish. In fact, for certain people and at certain times, that very state of heavy physical exhaustion acts as the direct catalyst for a cataplexy episode. This passive atmospheric fog of a sleep attack suddenly feeds into an active motor phenomenon, short-circuiting into a localized sheet of dropped muscle tone. This partial presentation and triggering framework is incredibly webbed, far from fully comprehended, and rarely clearly recognized. This exact overlap is precisely where the conflicts, contradictions, divisions stem from within patient and clinical viewpoints regarding how these symptoms and disorders are labeled, understood, and referenced. Ultimately, sleep paralysis is a lingering of atonia into wakefulness, presenting as sleep inertia or sleep drunkenness, also at times such as during sleep attacks, microsleeps, and heavy excessive daytime sleepiness, while cataplexy is an intrusion of that same REM atonia into our waking life. One is a mind trying to break out of a lingering sleep state. The other is a walking body experiencing a sudden short-circuit intrusion of REM mechanics. We will dive much deeper into this complex leaky switch and the quirks of partial cataplexy and severe cataplexy in the next video. Before I go, I'll offer a couple of perhaps helpful methods for when you're experiencing sleep paralysis. Remember the break the freeze techniques from the infographics. Focus on the extremities. Attempt to wiggle a finger or toe to reboot the motor cortex and the atonia. Control your eyes. Rapidly moving your eyes back and forth can signal the brain to wake up. Side sleeping. Sleeping in a lateral position reduces the likelihood of these episodes compared to sleeping on your back. Additionally, having big stresses and or anxieties in your day-to-day or being overworked may influence the occurrence of both hallucinations and sleep paralysis as they do combine. Furthermore, resisting or battling to break out of the paralysis can potentially amplify the ordeal. Thank you for sticking with me. I hope to have the cataplexy video done sooner rather than later. I'll see you then.